Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. I'm a builder, primarily working on high-end custom homes in the $1 to $4 million price range. I am a 34-year-old woman, which isn't common in this industry, but I love what I do and am fairly decent at it. In the past, my projects were mainly in rural areas on large ranches. However, this particular project is in the middle of a large city, which means there are neighbors in close proximity. Something new for me to handle. The neighbors in this area are some of the worst, most entitled and unpleasant people you can imagine. One of them is a celebrity and his wife, we will call her B, who is also well known. I haven't personally had much interaction with the couple. When B goes walking every morning, I smile and wave, which I do with everyone because this is Texas, and she always ignores me. Honestly, it's not a big deal. I'm not going to stop being kind just because she is unfriendly, so I eventually just started ignoring her. My job site has been very busy over the past year, and most of my subcontractors park along the street in front of the house. We all park on one side, facing the proper flow of traffic. If someone happens to park on the other side of the street, the neighbors call the cops or the city building official. I find this incredibly annoying and childish, but we move our vehicles and it's not a big deal. Every morning, I stop by my project to give my workers instructions, check on the work that has been done, make my lists, etc. Most of the time, I park on the very right side of B's property, which is just to the left of my project's construction driveway, so my workers have parking in front of the project house. I'm usually there for 2 to 3 hours. One day, while I was outside the house, a woman approached me. I wasn't sure who she was, but apparently it was B's maid. She informed me that I needed to move my car, which was on the correct side of the public street, or B was going to call the police. I told her there was nothing wrong with me parking there. The maid then proceeded to tell me that B was going to charge me $500 a day for parking in front of her house. I laughed and told the maid I didn't know they were that hard up that they needed to charge a parking fee for using the public street. I went ahead and called the police to get ahead of the situation. The officer informed me there wasn't anything B could do about me parking in front of her property, which I knew, but I could get a ticket for parking within 15 feet of a fire hydrant, which is on the property line between my project and B's house. The officer informed me I needed to be 15 feet away from the hydrant. I thanked him, and he left. So I did end up moving my car. I took my measuring tape and measured out 15 feet, which put me almost smack in front of B's house. I decided to park in front of her front sidewalk for 2 weeks after that. Every time she does something rude to me on the street, which happens more than I prefer, I park in front of her house just to annoy her. Honestly, if she had just come to me in the beginning and asked me nicely not to park in front of her house, I probably never would have again, unless absolutely necessary. But the fact she was okay sending her help to threaten me really upset me. Am I in the wrong for keeping this going? I don't like when people think they are above you because they are well off. I know billionaires who have better manners than this woman. Hey guys, sorry it's been a while. I know a lot of people have been wanting an update. Unfortunately, it's not as exciting as some of you were hoping for, but I'm actually happy with how things turned out. The very next day, the dog poop girl showed up again, but this time she didn't come near our balcony. I don't know if someone in her life told her she was going to get in trouble or what, but it seemed clear she still wanted us to know she was fine with what had happened. I emailed the landlords as they'd requested and said she was outside right now, etc. The office thanked me, and then I never heard from them again. The next day, a different woman was walking her dog. I thought that was kind of weird, but I figured maybe she hired someone so she could leave that job to someone else. For around a month or two, I think. I can't remember the full timeline. We didn't see her, and we could only speculate. Maybe she lived with her boyfriend here. One of my roommates said she saw her with a guy, and he told her to stop staying over if she was going to cause problems. Maybe she got the fine and threw a temper tantrum and left. I figured she also could just be avoiding our side of the property. It was hard to say, but I was just glad to not have to deal with her. Finally, a couple of weeks ago, I was heading to the other side of the property, and I saw her with her dog. So she's still here, clearly just avoiding our side of the complex. And that is more than fine with me. I have no idea what went down throughout that period, and I'm not sure I ever will. I did notice she seemed to have dog poop bags with her this time though, which was funny. I can only speculate that they caught her, fined her, and told her there'd be more fines after that. I don't know what happened, but they took some sort of action with the dog owners in our building, because I now see every dog owner walking around with bags. The dog poop problem has gotten much better. Maybe knowing their neighbors were watching and tired of their nice walking area being covered in excrement motivated them to be more responsible. Here's hoping it stays at this level. I really don't like having confrontations, but I'm also not one to put up with other people's mess, figuratively or literally. I know that some of you were hoping for a big explosion or some juicy details regarding this woman being put in her place. I'm personally just glad to not have to see her anymore. She never tried to retaliate, thankfully, and I'm guessing people in her life let her know she was digging her own grave. I actually wonder if part of why she avoids us completely is so that we don't see that she's being forced to pick the poop up now, which is a hilarious thought. If anything else suddenly happens, I promise to update again. But as it is, it looks like this has sort of quietly solved itself. I do kind of wish I knew more details, just out of my own curiosity, but we can at least all be satisfied with the fact that she was absolutely convinced she was in the right, and it blew up in her face. She's probably still awful, of course, but at least someone is holding her accountable. I waited this long to see if anything else happened, but it looks like this might be the end of the story, which I'd honestly prefer. However, if anything comes up again, like I said, I'll let you all know. Thanks for sharing inventing with me, while I dealt with a very, very frustrating situation. I appreciated all of your comments and support. This isn't my story but my best friend's, and I got her permission to share it. My best friend, T, 26F, and her husband, A, 27M, live with A's parents and younger brother in his early 20s, and his girlfriend, also in her early 20s. The situation is quite chaotic. To give you some context about T, she grew up with almost nothing. Both she and A are the eldest children in their families. T is caring, bubbly, has a childlike innocence, is empathetic, and incredibly hardworking. She is the hardest worker I have ever met. In the 11 years we've been friends, I've seen her go from couch surfing while doing side jobs to getting her bachelor's degree and securing a good-paying full-time job. Both she and A work full-time, and T even earns more than A. They have a young daughter, C, 1 to 3 years old. Now here's the issue with the in-laws. T and A aren't married yet. They were supposed to have a courthouse wedding when T got pregnant, but things didn't work out. However, they are planning to get married soon. T has contributed a lot to the household. She bought an air conditioning unit for the family, cleans the house, and helps A pay for his father's motorcycle, which neither of them uses. She also contributes to the electricity, water, and internet bills. Despite all this, she rarely eats at home and usually eats at her parents' house with A. The sister-in-law is quite troublesome, as is the brother-in-law. Neither of them works or contributes anything to the household. It got to the point where T noticed their toiletries running out quickly, realizing that her brother-in-law and his girlfriend were using their supplies. T and A had to store their groceries in their bedroom because they paid for them. The sister-in-law has a daughter with the brother-in-law, who is a year or two younger than C. This woman posts photos of her daughter online, begging for money. Despite not working, she leaves her child alone in their bedroom without telling anyone. She relies on her parents and in-laws to buy necessities for the child, but finds the money to get tattoos. She also has an older daughter from a previous boyfriend, whom she tried to baby trap at 16, only for him to leave her. What upset T recently was when their mother-in-law gave C a cookie that belonged to the sister-in-law's daughter. The sister-in-law complained, asking why T wasn't buying cookies for C, even though T wasn't the one who gave the cookie to C. Besides, C doesn't even like cookies, she prefers soup. T had bought cookies before, but C never ate them, and A ended up eating them. T was understandably upset. She didn't give the cookie to C, and it was selfish of the sister-in-law to complain about a single cookie given to a toddler. The sister-in-law also makes snarky comments about T, looking down on her despite T and A working hard for C. They provide their daughter with everything they didn't have as children. They never leave C alone without supervision and follow the pediatrician's advice. C is a healthy and happy toddler who loves being with her parents. In contrast, the sister-in-law screams at her toddler and threatens to beat her. Their mother-in-law has even scolded the sister-in-law for starting fights with her child. Imagine being an adult who can't handle their child being a child. As someone without children, I am more concerned for her child than she is. I don't understand how she can leave her kid alone in a room without telling anyone. What if there was a fire? What if the child fell off the bed or hit her head? Toddlers are accident-prone. If you're not worried about your child, what kind of parent are you? The sister-in-law has no job, does nothing but gossip with the neighbors, and yet still manages to make T look like a bad mom. I hope karma catches up with the sister-in-law, because otherwise I might lose my patience. There is much more to say about this sister-in-law, but it would take me a week to write it all down. Well, that's T's sister-in-law, who she can't consider a sister. Edit. To those saying T and A should move out because they're adults, please understand we are not in the United States. We live in an Asian country where cultural norms are different. T's in-laws are a huge help and take care of C when T and A are at work. Babysitters are not common here, and family members are trusted for childcare. Many adult children with successful jobs still live with their parents here. T's in-laws are good people. It's the sister-in-law who acts like she owns the house. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. First things first, let me introduce myself. I'm your average Joe, well, let's call me Alex, just trying to navigate life one Reddit post at a time. I've seen my fair share of Karens on the internet, but I never thought I'd have a run-in with one in real life. Oh boy, was I in for a surprise. So there I am, sitting comfortably in my seat, lost in the depths of Reddit, when all of a sudden chaos erupts a few rows ahead. I glance up, and what do I see? A full-blown Karen, complete with the "I want to speak to the manager" haircut, and an aura of entitlement thicker than a brick wall. Classic. Now, let me set the scene for you. The bus is packed, sardine can packed, with folks just trying to get from point A to point B without losing their sanity. And there's this poor kid, maybe 13 years old, clutching onto a seat like it's a lifeline. You can practically feel his desperation. But Karen's having none of it. She marches up to the kid like she's on a mission from the Karen sphere itself, and without a second thought, she pulls him away from the seat, claiming she deserves it more. I kid you not, folks, she legit yanks the kid by the arm, and before I know it, the kid's crying out in pain. Next thing I know, this poor kid's shoulder is hanging at an angle that shoulders shouldn't hang at. The Karen sphere has bestowed upon her some otherworldly strength, apparently. My brain's processing all this in slow-mo, and then it hits me. There's no way I'm letting this slide. Hey, hold the actual phone, I shout, summoning every ounce of courage I've got. What's your deal, lady? Karen shoots me a look that could curdle milk, and in the most condescending tone she goes, "Oh please. This seat is way too precious for a kid like him. I need it more, and he looks okay to me. He's acting poorly." "Listen, lady," I say, trying to keep my cool. "You can't just go around dislocating shoulders 'cause you think you're some sort of bus royalty." By this point, a small crowd has gathered, sensing the impending drama. And that's when Karen does the unthinkable. She tries to make a run for it. But I am not having it. I step in front of her like a boss, arms spread wide like I'm some sort of untitled busting superhero. "Oh no you don't," I declare, locking eyes with Karen. "You're not going anywhere till the authorities sort this out." She tries to push past me, but I stand my ground. I'm not backing down, not today, Satan, Karen. Minutes feel like hours as I continue my standoff with the human embodiment of entitlement. I'm keeping her in check, throwing out snarky comments and Reddit-worthy one-liners to keep the crowd entertained. Hey, if I'm gonna be a hero, might as well play the part, right? Finally, the glorious sound of sirens fills the air as the cavalry arrives. The actual police. Turns out someone on the bus had called them while I was playing the part of Karen's captor. They quickly assess the situation, take a statement from the kid, and slap the cuffs on Karen. Sweet, sweet justice. As they lead Karen away, huffing and puffing about her rights and all that, I turn to the kid, who's looking a bit less terrified now. I introduce myself, and tell him about my sister Nora, who's a kick-ass lawyer and could help him out. Kid's eyes light up like a Christmas tree. Here, take this number, I say, scribbling down Nora's digits on a scrap of paper. She'll make sure you get the justice you deserve. He takes the number with a grateful smile, and I watch as Karen is escorted off the bus, a triumphant feeling swelling in my chest. I did it. I took down the strongest Karen known to man. My Reddit karma just hit the roof, and I didn't even need an upvote. So, there you have it, my fellow Redditors. A wild ride on the bus, a dislocated shoulder, and a showdown with the grand poobah of entitled Karens. And through it all, yours truly, armed with nothing but a sense of justice and a touch of Reddit sass, emerged victorious. Remember, folks, you never know when you'll be called upon to be a hero. And if you ever cross paths with a Karen, just remember, there's a little bit of our pro-revenge in all of us. Stay safe out there, and keep those entitled folks in check. Over and out. For many reasons, I, 19, went no contact with my family and moved across the country to be with my partner. However, after 3 months, I received a summer job offer that paid well and was close to where my family still lived. Between this and other family members pressuring me to contact my mother, 62, for financial support and to help mother heal, I ended up calling her. It turns out she had hired a private investigator and thought she knew exactly where I was living and with whom. She said she was relieved I reached out and hoped I could meet up with her and my father, 62, when I came over for my job. I already knew this was insincere because before I blocked her email, she sent messages threatening to take away every form of insurance, my college fund, and my phone plan. I bought my own before she even threatened to take it away. She went so far as to give me deadlines where, for each date that passed, she'd take away more. I ended up meeting her and my dad the day after I flew in. My mother was acting apologetic, and even gave me and my partner a gift basket while my father acted as if nothing had happened. I thought everything was going fine, and that my mother had gotten better. So I told her that part of why I left was the homophobia and transphobia from my dad, as well as the incredible academic pressure and both of them changing moods on a dime. She took it well at the time and talked about how things had improved. We made a date for me to pick up my stuff, including my personal documents, passport, birth certificate, social security card, etc. But when the time came, I was bogged down with work related to processing for my job and trying to work out issues with financing a car to drive to work. I told her I might be late, and she suggested I call her to get ideas on how to work some of it out, but she wasn't helpful. By the end of the call, it was 30 minutes past the time we were supposed to meet, and I asked if it was still okay for me to come and pick things up. She said I couldn't, and when I asked if another time later that day worked, she said no without further explanation, and hung up, after saying she'd tell me someday when I could pick up my stuff. She did ask to have a check-in call at 9 p.m. that same day, and I agreed to it. My partner noticed I was exhausted and stressed about the idea of calling my mother, so she suggested she update my mom and tell her I needed a little distance until I was less stressed, and I agreed. The day before my job started, I got an email stating that I would need to physically bring in the forms of identification I used for the online processing, driver's license, and ordered copy of my birth certificate. However, I hadn't packed my birth certificate because I didn't think I'd need it. I tried texting and calling my mom to ask if she could come by and drop it off because I didn't have a car, and using a ride-sharing service was expensive, or if we could meet at an in-between spot to make it cheaper. I didn't get a reply for a while, until after an hour, I received a lengthy email from her. It was about 10 paragraphs long, and she sounded irrational. She said the homophobic and transphobic comments from my dad weren't real, and that he is an ally, even if he constantly misgenders me and uses the wrong name. Additionally, she said that if I did not go to college in this state, she would convert all $50,000 of my college fund into fund money for her and my dad. Shortly after, I got a text saying she would do me a favor and give me the spare birth certificate she had, and that she didn't have to give me anything because my documents belonged to her. She set a place and a cutoff time where she would leave, but regardless of whether I walked or used a ride-sharing service, I would have arrived way past the cutoff. Instead, I went directly to the police and asked them to get all of the documents from her for me, since she was now refusing to give me anything but that spare birth certificate. The officer I talked to sent another officer to my mother and called her on the phone to let her know police were coming to pick it up. The officer on the phone almost got into an argument with my mother because she kept insisting that my passport and other items belonged to her, and I had no claim to them. When the other officer arrived to pick things up, she had the nerve to lie and say she had no idea where anything else was because my room was a mess. I quickly told the officers that was untrue because she had never let me have access to them in the past, and I had no idea where they were at any point. They eventually managed to get her to hand over everything. I'm a 21-year-old male. My parents are generally loving and caring people who have sacrificed a lot to secure a better life for me and my younger siblings. Like all parents, though, they have their flaws, some of which I deem as abusive, but they vehemently deny. So, Reddit, based on this list, are my parents abusive regarding their corporal punishment for my and my siblings' various misdeeds? My experiences include waking up in the middle of the night to be beaten by my mother after she went through my phone, which I let her borrow because hers wasn't working. She saw me exchanging mild jokes with a friend on WhatsApp. I've been belted several times by both parents for talking to strangers about my personal life due to stranger danger when I was about 10, or getting into arguments with my siblings. I have been smacked in the head multiple times for various misdeeds, such as accidentally miswriting something on a homework report, or being unable to tell the time in my preteens. I've been pinched multiple times for not wanting to take my shirt off during a family outdoor activity in the spring, or behaving inappropriately as a kid. My dad once smashed a small chair over my head for getting into an argument with my sister. For various other misdeeds, I've been kicked, violently shaken, beaten with a wooden spoon, had objects thrown at me, forced to kneel on the floor and raise my arms in the air until told otherwise, and made to stay outside in the wind wearing just a shirt and shorts. I recall one of my parents threatening that they might not be able to control themselves if they were sufficiently angry. I have been threatened with bodily harm countless times and received several death threats, even if they weren't serious. If I showed a hint of resistance toward my mother's physical discipline by reflexively protecting myself, she'd guilt-trip me by saying, "So the sun strikes back, even though I would never retaliate, only shield myself. Even at age 21, when I confronted her about her physical discipline, she defended herself by claiming that I only focused on the negatives and never the positives of their parenting. She doesn't regret anything she ever did to me, and said that even if I were age 24, she would still dole out physical punishment if she wanted to. When I said I wouldn't let her touch me, she asked if this meant I was going to start beating her back. I said I'd never lay a hand on her, nor had I ever thought of doing so. It's just that I wouldn't let her touch me, that's it. She asked, what if she were to throw a shoe at me? Would I throw the shoe back at her? I said no, I'd just keep a distance from her. She lost all control and started berating me for being an ungrateful son before abruptly changing her tune and claiming she was only joking. One time, my mother continually interrupted my conversation with my father over the phone, causing me to tell her in frustration that I was trying to talk on the phone. She misinterpreted this as me telling her to shut up, resulting in her immediately getting physical with me. My dad once yelled at me to stop crying during shower time as he doused me with cold water, which I absolutely hated because the hot water wasn't working. When I was about 6, we had just enjoyed a sweaty game of football with some local kids, which soured the experience for me and made me reluctant to play football outside again, since I could only play with one of my parents present. During one summer vacation at the beach, my dad tried to take me to deeper water despite my discomfort, as I couldn't swim properly yet. This resulted in me almost drowning, but my mother saved me. Another time, my mother continuously made fun of something I wrote in a book, causing me to smack the book out of her hand in anger, for which she beat me and locked me in my room. In my later teens, my dad frequently had me help with strenuous activities, such as refurbishing our house and building our upcoming shop. This often left me completely drained, to the point where neighboring shopkeepers expressed concern and suggested he go easier on me, or at least pay me for my efforts. He responded by asking, "Don't they know you're my son?" I never complained or declined his requests for help, since I knew we were tight on money, and he needed all the free help he could get. However, there were instances of potential abuse, such as when he got angry and yelled at me to perform a task I genuinely didn't understand. I bleated for help, but he continued to get frustrated and scared me. Another time, after a hard day's work at the shop, I didn't immediately acknowledge something my dad said to me, leading him to berate me for a supposed social blunder. When I reminded him of a social blunder he once committed, he punched me in the face and berated me more until we got home. When we arrived home, I declined dinner because I was uncomfortable being around him and wanted to go to bed. He forced me to sit next to him and eat, while he shot a death glare at me, asserting his dominance. My dad could be very short-tempered and erratic at times, making me feel like I was walking on eggshells around him. For instance, when I greeted him with a casual hello one morning, he froze and glared at me. I quickly apologized. He scolded me for laying my heavy head back on the sofa while he spoke to me, and for saying "excuse me" if he was in our way in the house, as he considered it too formal for family. He also scolded us if we forgot to say good morning to him after waking up. I've had to appeal to my mother to ask him to control his temper on several occasions, and as a result, I feel like I can never truly relax around him. On multiple occasions, I've been forced to eat something even if I didn't want to. I had a bedwetting problem for most of my life. One time, when I was about 5, Dad woke me up in the middle of the night to discover that I had once again wet the bed. He angrily told me to get up, face the wall, and remain in that position in my urine-stained clothes as punishment while he changed my bed. He then changed my clothes and made me go back to bed. I have noticeable bumps on my forehead, which I remember obtaining from hitting my head on the ground as a toddler. However, Mum claims they are just natural, which I interpret as dismissive. Mum accused Dad of cheating on her, but he proved he wasn't. Years later, when I inquired about their fight, she told me the truth. It was a misunderstanding over his fidelity, which I suspected at the time. When I brought it up again later, she lied about it, which I again see as dismissive. When Mum caught me watching inappropriate content for the first time at age 12, she berated me, asking whether this meant I would like to see her or my sister naked. During some of our more heated arguments, Mum has claimed several times that I wouldn't care if she died, despite my being incredibly devoted and loving towards her during my preteens and early teens. When I was a kid, I told Dad I wanted to make cartoons as a career, and he said that job was for a software engineer. As an adult, I realize now that he was being dismissive. Both of my parents tended to downplay my mental health issues, advising me to turn myself over to God. I no longer believe in God, so that advice fell on deaf ears. I am terrified of coming out to them as an atheist because of their fundamentalist beliefs. After deceiving my parents for 2 years about my online learning, Dad let me know in no uncertain terms how extremely let down he was. He repeatedly told me how he had never seen anything like this happen anywhere in his entire life. He was 55 at this point, and how my deception and failure were among the biggest disappointments in his life, the other being the civil war raging in our homeland. This civil war resulted in the genocide of thousands of our ethnic tribe. He also said he was so angry but couldn't beat me to let it out because I was an adult. I was 20 at the time, so he had to stew helplessly in his own anger. My little brother's experiences, not comprehensive. He was severely punished by Mum after his friends tricked him into writing an inappropriate word on a whiteboard. He didn't even know what it meant, but I could hear his pitiful wails and screams from the bedroom where Mum was punishing him. He accidentally tripped and broke a stair pillar while we were organizing the shoe room once, causing Mum to lose her temper and get physical with him. When I brought this up with Dad years later, Mum either lied about the events or didn't recall them well. Regardless, Dad was more inclined to believe her than me. During his psychosis, when he had trouble eating or drinking, Mum got physical with him by trying to forcefully make him drink some water along with his medicine, causing it to spill all over his face. He has also been pinched and smacked on the head several times for various misdeeds and threatened with bodily harm several times. My little sister's experiences, not comprehensive. When my sister was 10, some of her friends called her from Dad's phone. She asked if she could pick up, and he said yes, but when he asked her to give him the phone, she impulsively hung up. Dad slapped her hard across the face for it. Mum hit her because she was taking too long to get ready for a mandatory walk. Mum got very physical with her after finding out she was getting some remote information technology help to fix an issue on a laptop she was working on. When she was 12, Dad punched her around the back of her head for going to his and Mum's room in the morning to look for clothes. When she was 13, Dad threatened to gouge out her eyes and cut her legs if she wore mascara. Dad hit her across the face because she sighed during one of his lectures. Dad told her he wasn't abusive compared to other parents who go so far as killing their kids, so he wasn't bad. Dad punched her around the face for sighing during another lecture, even though she never did, causing her to cry right before a school performance. Dad beat her legs with a belt until a flap of skin came off and she bled for 5 minutes because she had a tiny bit of mascara on. Dad punched her numerous times in the back of her head because she had plucked her brows and forced Mum's hands behind her back and shoved her onto the bed when she tried to intervene. When she was 9 and late to school because the car was down, Dad rode her to school on a bike. Her leg got caught in the wheel as they were going full speed, almost causing her foot to be cut in half. She was in so much pain, but he wouldn't check the wound until her friends at school insisted she get it checked because she could barely walk. Dad still frequently threatens to beat and throw things at her if he gets angry enough, and she's a young adult. Dad slapped her across the face when she was acting bratty towards him, and took her upstairs to slap her some more. Dad tried to make her study almost every day of the summer, even though she was already a good student attending grammar school. Dad got very angry with her for simply reading literature during her study breaks, and disallowed her from doing so. This is not to say it's all been bad. I'm currently 21 and living in the United Kingdom, but I was born in East Africa. Dad anticipated that our country would one day descend into chaos, which it did. So, starting from absolutely nothing, he worked tirelessly to move his wife and 3 kids to Italy when I was 7, before finally moving us to the United Kingdom when I was 8 while he worked abroad. He worked himself to the bone for tortuous hours in several different countries, some war-torn with civil wars raging all around him, facing potential death, without seeing his children for months on end for 7 years, also that they could have a better life than he ever had. He and his father suffered the aftermath of a devastating civil war that destroyed their livelihood, and lost everything when he was our age. During those 7 years, Mum single-handedly raised us as a lonely housewife in a totally new and unfamiliar land with virtually no employment while her husband worked abroad trying to make ends meet. She dutifully made us breakfast, lunch, and dinner practically every single day for those 7 years. I can admit we barely had to do any household chores in our preteens and early teens, as she was basically doing everything for us, so you could say we were spoiled to an extent. They would both frequently instigate family time to bond with us kids, and during many of these times, they would try to instill a strong moral fiber in us due to their Christian background, telling us to do our best to be altruistic and morally upstanding people in all situations. Mom never had a problem expressing her love for us and would do her best to emotionally support us if we needed her. The same with Dad. He usually had no problem telling us he loved us. He officially quit his job when I was 16 and permanently moved to the United Kingdom, as he couldn't bear to continue being separated from us any longer. He also wanted to start a business in the United Kingdom, which he won't get to operate for long anyway, since he's in his mid-50s, and planned to leave everything in our hands for us to profit from. Both my parents had difficult childhoods, and their parents also used corporal punishment, which is why they think it's okay to use it on me and my siblings. They experienced similar treatment at our age, and claim they turned out okay. My father growing up to be a father of 3 making 6 figures, and my mother being a strong-willed woman. So Reddit, are my parents abusive? Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences and opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.